The CEO invited me to lunch only to tell me we're going in a different direction. After building the tech division from nothing, I was being replaced by the owner's nephew. These things happen, I replied with a smile. No one realized that I had already seen it coming for months. My name is Derek. I'm 42 and for 11 years, I've been the backbone of Riverton Manufacturing's IT infrastructure. Not that you'd know it from our company website or quarterly reports. I built our network security from the ground up when we were still using Windows XP and storing passwords on sticky notes. Turned a 5-person help desk into a 30-person operation that kept 3 production facilities running 24/7. The machines don't stop in Milwaukee, and neither did I. I wasn't even supposed to be there that long. Took the job as a stopgap after my divorce, something to keep me busy while I figured out what was next. But I was good at it, really good, and somewhere along the way, those servers and networks became mine. Not legally, but in every way that mattered. The lunch was at Maxwell's, the kind of place with white tablecloths where executives take clients they want to impress. Not the kind of place where you fire someone. But Preston Campbell, our CEO, was always about appearances. "Derek, you've been invaluable," he said, cutting into his steak. "But we need fresh perspectives, someone with vision for where tech is heading." Translation: we found someone cheaper who won't push back when the board makes stupid decisions. Harrison's nephew just finished his master's at MIT. Brilliant kid specialized in digital transformation. I nodded, took a sip of water. "Who's handling the transition?" Preston looked relieved I wasn't making a scene. "You'll have 6 weeks. We'll announce after the quarterly all hands." I signed the NDA he brought before dessert arrived, smiled and shook his hand, told him I understood business decisions had to be made. Back at my desk, I noticed my admin credentials had already been downgraded. My name removed from the leadership team email chain. They'd decided before lunch, probably weeks ago. That night, I couldn't sleep, not from anger, though there was plenty. Not from fear about finding a new job, but because of what I'd noticed in the server logs 3 months earlier. Small unauthorized access attempts from an IP address I traced to the executive floor. Someone poking around in systems they shouldn't know existed, looking at my documentation, my security protocols, my contingency plans. They weren't just replacing me. They were mining me for everything I knew first. I moved to Milwaukee 16 years ago following Ellie after we got married. Left a decent security job in Minneapolis because she got into graduate school here. We were young, ambitious. I figured I'd find something. The divorce blindsided me. 7 years of building a life, then suddenly papers on the kitchen counter. "We want different things," she said. "No fights, no warning signs, just done." When Riverton hired me, I was sleeping on my brother's couch. They needed someone to patch together their failing network infrastructure after a ransomware attack. I was supposed to be temporary, but I saw potential. These manufacturing guys knew machines, but not computers. Their entire operation, millions in equipment, hundreds of jobs, was running on outdated systems, one crash away from disaster. I pitched Preston a 5-year overhaul plan. He gave me the budget and let me work. For 3 years, I barely saw daylight, rebuilt every network, trained staff, created backups and fail-safes. When the Northeast blackout hit, we were the only facility in the region that stayed online. The board noticed. Preston started bringing me to meetings. My budget tripled. I hired a team, good people like Vanessa, who became my right hand, and Luis, who could code his way through any problem. We weren't just it anymore. We were the reason Riverton could promise clients they'd never miss a deadline. Harrison Wells, the majority owner, shook my hand at the company Christmas party in 2019. "You turned us into a modern operation," he said. "We couldn't have expanded without your systems. I thought I'd found my place somewhere I mattered." The first crack appeared last September, a consultant showing up unannounced to audit our digital infrastructure. He asked basic questions about systems I designed myself. When I asked who authorized the audit, he mentioned the executive team and changed the subject. Then my access to board meeting minutes disappeared from the shared drive. "Server cleanup," the explanation read. In December, Preston started canceling our weekly briefings, always with a reasonable excuse. At the New Year leadership retreat, I overheard Harrison talking about his nephew graduating. Brilliant with computers, he said. Silicon Valley companies fighting over him. I didn't think much of it, should have. The final sign came when Vanessa told me about a meeting. She'd been invited to a strategic planning session. I should have led. When she mentioned my name, Preston had changed the subject. Something felt off, she said, like they were planning around you. I brushed it off, loyal to a fault, my ex used to say 2 days after the lunch. I stood in the server room at 7 p.m., long after most people had gone home. The quiet hum of machinery had always calmed me. These racks of servers, the blinking lights, the cooling systems, I'd selected every component, designed the redundancies. This was my space. I ran my hand along the edge of the main console. 11 years of my life hidden behind these walls, working late. I turned to find Nathan Blake, Harrison's nephew, standing in the doorway. Clean cut, expensive watch, casual confidence. He couldn't have been more than 30, just routine checks, I said. You need something, getting the lay of the land. He walked in like he already owned the place. Preston mentioned you'd be showing me around soon. Did he? Nathan studied the server configuration. Impressive setup. A bit old school, but solid. Old school. I'd upgraded these systems 8 months ago. Your documentation is thorough, he continued. Been reading through your protocols. I have some ideas for modernization. He said it like he was doing me a favor, looking forward to hearing them. The words tasted like chalk. After he left, I sat down at my workstation, opened the access logs. Nathan's credentials had been created 3 weeks before my lunch with Preston. He'd been given top-level administrator access. Already viewed my entire documentation library. I pulled out my phone and texted Luis, "Can you meet tomorrow before work? Coffee at Joe's, 6:30. That night, I drove to the lakefront, parked where Ellie and I used to watch sunsets. The water was black. Under the winter sky, I thought about the day Preston had promoted me to director. You're the backbone of this place, he'd said. We couldn't run without you. Turns out backbones are replaceable, too. Luis was already at the coffee shop when I arrived the next morning. Dark circles under his eyes. He knew something was wrong. They're phasing me out, I said without preamble. He nodded slowly. I figured they've been asking weird questions, having me explain your systems. When, couple weeks now. He looked down at his coffee. I'm sorry, man. I should have told you. I didn't blame him. Luis had kids, a mortgage. What's your plan? He asked. I hadn't realized I had one until he asked. But sitting there watching early morning commuters hustle past the window, something settled inside me, a clarity I hadn't felt since finding Ellie's divorce papers. They think everything's in the documentation, I said quietly. But we both know it's not. Luis leaned forward. The proprietary tools, the workarounds, I nodded. The patches I built that aren't in any manual, the custom monitoring system, the client interface no one else fully understands. Derek, I'm not going to sabotage anything, I said. But I'm not going to give away what's mine either. Luis studied me for a moment, then nodded. He understood. I need copies of everything I developed personally, I said. And I need to know who's still loyal. The official announcement came during the all-hands meeting the following week. Preston standing at the podium talking about exciting transitions and fresh perspectives. Nathan beside him smiling politely at the appropriate moments. Derek has been instrumental in building our IT infrastructure, Preston said, not looking at me. And we're grateful for his contributions as he helps us transition to Nathan's leadership over the next 6 weeks. Murmurs rippled through the room. Most of the IT team looked shocked. Vanessa's eyes found mine from across the room. A silent question. I gave her the smallest of nods. After the meeting, I requested a sit-down with Preston and HR, pointed out that several of the systems Nathan would be taking over were built by me outside normal work hours using my own development framework. The employment contract is clear, said Diane from HR, sliding a document across the table. Anything developed during your tenure is company property, not everything, I countered. The System Sync interface was developed before I joined Riverton. I licensed it to the company but retained ownership. It's right there in the original agreement. Preston shifted uncomfortably. That was 10 years ago, Derek. The company has evolved. So has System Sync. Every update, every integration was built on my original code. I leaned forward. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just want proper compensation for my intellectual property. Preston and Diane exchanged glances. We'll look into it, Preston said finally. In the meantime, please focus on the transition with Nathan. I knew that look. They were stalling. The next morning, my access to the development servers was restricted. Security protocol during transition periods. Read the automated email. Nathan called a team meeting without inviting me. When I showed up anyway, he seemed annoyed but covered it quickly. Derek, glad you could join us. I was just outlining some changes to the network architecture. I leaned against the door frame. Interesting. Which architecture specifically? The main production floor systems, he said confidently. We're going to streamline the protocols. Those protocols prevent machine failures under peak load, I said evenly. They're custom designed for our equipment. Nathan's smile tightened. Modern systems don't require such complex workarounds. They're not workarounds, Vanessa interjected. They're necessary adaptations for our specific hardware. Derek designed them after the 2018 failure. The room fell silent. Nathan's confidence wavered for a moment, then. Well, I appreciate the historical perspective, but we're moving forward with the streamlining. He turned to the whiteboard, effectively dismissing me. Later that day, I received an email from legal. The company was asserting full ownership of all systems, including System Sync, citing a clause about integrated technologies becoming company property. They offered me a technology acquisition bonus of $5,000. The real betrayal came the next day. I discovered Nathan had scheduled one-on-one meetings with each of my team members, not transition discussions, full job evaluations. He was assessing who to keep. Luis texted me afterward. He asked if your systems were really necessary or just overcomplicated, fishing for criticism. That night, I found an email from one of our suppliers in my personal account. They were confused about the new licensing agreement Riverton had sent over, one I knew nothing about. I pulled up the document. Preston had signed a deal transferring all my custom supplier integrations to a third-party vendor, Nathan's former classmate startup. They weren't just pushing me out. They were dismantling everything I'd built and selling it off. When I tried to access the backup servers to retrieve my original code, I found my credentials revoked entirely. Game on. I needed leverage and I needed it fast. Riverton hadn't just been careless. They'd been calculating. The timeline was becoming clear. Nathan had been brought in months ago studying my systems, preparing to replace me while extracting everything I knew. That night, I reached out to Darren Phillips, a network security specialist I'd worked with years ago. We met at a diner off the highway, the kind of place executives like Preston would never set foot in. Legally, you're in a tough spot, Darren said after I explained the situation. But there's something that doesn't add up. Why push you out now? The company's doing well. That's what I can't figure out, I admitted. Let me dig around, he offered. Just information gathering, nothing intrusive. 2 days later, Darren called me at 11 p.m. You need to see this. He'd found SEC filings showing Riverton was preparing for acquisition. Techcore Industries, a manufacturing conglomerate from Boston, was in late-stage talks to buy them out. The deal was contingent on Riverton demonstrating modernized technical infrastructure and transitional leadership. They're cleaning house to make the sale look better, Darren explained. And your systems are a major selling point. The valuation specifically mentions the proprietary manufacturing management interface. My interface, System Sync. There's more, Darren continued. Harrison Wells cashed out most of his shares last quarter. The acquisition would mainly benefit Preston and the executive team. They get golden parachutes and executive positions at Techcore. The piece that broke me wasn't the acquisition. It was finding emails showing Preston and Harrison had discussed replacing me over 6 months ago. While I was pulling all-nighters to fix a major security breach, they were interviewing Nathan. I drove to the old industrial park where I'd first sketched the system sync architecture back when it was just an idea. Sat in my car until dawn, watching. The sky turned gray over abandoned warehouses. When I got home, I found an old external hard drive in my closet, plugged it in, and found what I was looking for, the original system sync code, pre-Riverton, the documentation showing I'd started development 8 months before joining the company. I also found the emails, Preston specifically requesting I integrate system sync with Riverton systems. His acknowledgement that it was my proprietary tool. His promise that we'd formalize ownership once things settled down. I trusted him. Fool me. The next day, Nathan called me into a meeting with Preston and Diane from HR. We're accelerating the transition, Preston said without preamble. Your last day will be next Friday. 2 weeks instead of 6, I noted. Any particular reason? Nathan has demonstrated exceptional capability, Diane said smoothly. And frankly, Derek, your attitude hasn't been conducive to a smooth handover. I nodded slowly. I see. We'll need you to complete all documentation Nathan and training by Wednesday. Of course, I replied, my voice steady. And the ownership of system sync. Have you had time to review the original agreements? Preston's expression hardened. Our legal team has determined that all integrated systems fall under company ownership. The separation package is generous, Derek. I suggest you take it. I stood up. I'll have my lawyer review everything. Don't make this difficult, Preston warned. It won't change the outcome. As I walked out, I texted Luis, Plan B tonight. 7 hours later, Luis handed me a flash drive in the parking lot of a grocery store. Everything you asked for, he said quietly. Original code bases, deployment logs, authentication keys. I thanked him, then asked, why are you helping me? He looked me in the eye. Because they think we're all replaceable. I spent the weekend meticulously documenting everything. The original system sync code, the emails with Preston, the licensing agreements, the dates proving I developed the core technology before Riverton. Monday morning, I arrived early, found Vanessa already at her desk looking tired. You heard about the accelerated timeline? She asked. I nodded. How's the team taking it? Not well. Nathan called emergency planning sessions all weekend. Tried to reverse engineer your monitoring system. She lowered her voice. It didn't go well. 3 alerts from the production floor got missed. Anyone hurt? No, but they had to shut down line 3 for 4 hours. Cost about $40,000 and lost production. I kept my expression Sorry neutral. To hear that, Derek, she hesitated. I think I'm next. Nathan's been asking if my role is necessary. I'd suspected as much. Vanessa knew too much about how things really worked. Do you trust me? I asked quietly. She didn't hesitate completely. I slid a sealed envelope across her desk. If anything happens this week, anything unusual, open this. It explains everything. That afternoon, I met with 3 separate patent attorneys. Paid rush fees to file provisional patents on key aspects of Not the whole system. Just the critical components that made it work with manufacturing equipment. On Tuesday, I completed all the transition documentation Nathan requested, attended his planning meeting, answered questions politely, the model employee. Meanwhile, Darren was helping me set up a secure server offsite. By midnight, I had transferred all my original code there, created a standalone version of System Sync that would run independently of Riverton's infrastructure. Wednesday morning, I found an email from TechCore Industries in my personal account, an invitation to discuss mutual business interests at their regional office. They'd heard I was leaving Riverton and were interested in my expertise. Someone was hedging their bets. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, then made a call to TechCore's VP of Operations, suggested we meet after my official departure from Riverton. He agreed immediately. That night, I executed the key part of my plan. Using the access credentials Luis had saved, I updated 3 critical components of System Sync. I added digital signature, verification that would check if the code had been modified by unauthorized parties. I updated the license to expire in exactly 8 days, the day after my official departure. I created a clean legal transition path. The system would continue functioning if a proper licensing agreement was signed. Nothing destructive, nothing malicious, just protecting what was mine. On Thursday, Nathan pulled me into his office. "Some of the team members say you've been acting strangely," he said. "Anything I should know about?" "Just focused on wrapping everything up," I replied. He studied me suspicious. "We're changing all system passwords and access credentials tomorrow after your departure." "Standard procedure. Makes sense," I said, "though it won't affect the core functionality of System Sync." Meaning just that the system is designed to work regardless of admin changes. That's the beauty of it. I could see him trying to decide if I was threatening something or just being informative. He chose wrong. "I think we're good here." He dismissed me. "Legal will meet with tomorrow for final paperwork." As I walked out, Preston passed me in the hallway. Barely nodded. 11 years reduced to that. By midnight, everything was in place. I sent one final email to my private server. Verification sequence Alpha 7 complete. The countdown had begun. Friday morning, I turned in my badge, signed the exit paperwork, declined the celebration lunch Nathan had organized, much to Preston's visible relief. As I walked to my car, Luis called. Nathan just changed all the admin passwords. They're doing a full system review this afternoon. "Thanks for letting me know," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we wait." I spent the weekend at home, ignored calls from unknown numbers, slept better than I had in months. Monday morning at 9:17 a.m., exactly when the production floor shifted to peak operation, every instance of System Sync across Riverton's 3 facilities displayed the same message: license expired. Please contact the developer to renew. By 9:20, the first production line halted. By 9:45, all 3 facilities were offline. At 10:30, Preston called me personally. "What the hell did you do?" He was trying to sound authoritative, but I could hear the panic. "I didn't do anything," I replied calmly. "The software license expired. As the developer and owner of System Sync, I'm happy to discuss renewal terms." "This is sabotage," he hissed. "It's standard license management," I corrected him. "Check the original integration agreement from 11 years ago. Clause 7 specifically states that Riverton was licensing the technology, not purchasing it." Silence on the line. "I've sent a proper licensing agreement to your legal department," I continued. "The terms are simple: recognition of my ownership, proper compensation for continued use, and a non-disclosure agreement about the circumstances of my departure." "That's extortion. That's business," I replied. These things happen. By 3 p.m., their lawyers had reviewed my documentation. By 5 p.m., the agreement was signed. 3 days later, I sat across from Techer's vice president of operations in their downtown office. He slid a contract across the table. "We're still acquiring Riverton," he said. "But we want you to lead the technical integration as a consultant, not an employee." The salary was twice what Riverton had paid me. Full control over my working hours and location. "What about Nathan?" I asked. The VP's expression soured slightly. "Mr. Blake will be transitioning to other opportunities." I signed the contract that afternoon. 2 weeks later, Luis called to tell me Nathan had been quietly removed from his position. The official story was that he'd pursued other opportunities. The actual reason was that 3 major clients had threatened to pull their contracts after repeated system failures. Preston remained CEO through the acquisition, but his role at Techcore was largely ceremonial. No real power, no real team, just a fancy title and an office away from decision makers. I didn't feel the vindication I expected, just a quiet certainty that I'd done what was necessary. The following month, I used my first consulting check to put a down payment on a small cabin near the lake. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place with a deck overlooking the water. Somewhere I could watch the sun set and rise again. Vanessa joined my consulting team 3 months later. Then Louise eventually half my old department was working with me, not for me, partners in a growing business. I ran into Preston at a restaurant downtown about a year after everything happened. He started to turn away then stopped, came over to my table. You won, he said simply. I looked at him, really looked. The strain around his eyes, the slightly rumpled suit, he'd aged. It wasn't about winning, I replied, meaning it. It was about value, knowing what you're worth. He nodded once, then walked away. I sat there a long time, watching the city lights come on across the river, thinking about systems, the ones we build, the ones we break, and the ones that ultimately outlast us all.